listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, celebrating 25 years of broadcasting. Broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
The X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the Mutual Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, X-Zone Broadcast Network, and in Europe on Radio X. If you'd like to send us an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And you can find out what's been going on in the X-Zone, and what we intend on going on in the X-Zone at www.xzoneradio.com. Hey, my guest this hour is Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer. He's also known as the Psychic Explorer, and he's a practicing medium who communicates with spirits. He is also a successful attorney licensed to practice law in Florida, Washington, D.C., and before the United States Supreme Court. Mark graduated from Mercer Law School with honors, which included the study of law at Oxford University in England. He has also studied mediumship in England at the Arthur Findlay College for the Advancement of Psychic Science. Mark Anthony is the best-selling author of Evidence of Eternity and Never Letting Go. In June, Mark is a featured speaker at the Sedona Spirit Symposium, Understanding the Afterlife Through the 21st Century Science. In October, he launches the Psychic Explorer, Mark Anthony's Mystical Mayan Cruise. Joining me now is Mark Anthony, and his website is evidenceofeternity.com. And Mark, welcome back to the X-Zone.
Thanks, Rob. It is always great being here.
You are one busy dude, man. Tell me about the light of quantum consciousness.
Well, that's one of the topics that I'll be discussing at the Sedona Spirit Symposium. And what I've been finding, Rob, in my research and in my work as a psychic medium is that quantum physicists the world over, we're talking from Oxford, Cambridge, the German Max Planck Physics Institute, the Lebedev Physics Institute of Moscow, University of Arizona, MIT, the Japanese Physics Institute. Quantum physicists are now saying that we can prove the afterlife and the existence of a soul based on sound scientific principles. And this is really exciting. This is very, very exciting development.
What is the scientific proof?
Well, there's quite a bit.
Okay.
There's quite a bit. It starts with when Einstein was saying, actually 100 years ago, that we're all light beings. And Einstein was one of the founding fathers of quantum physics. Now, a lot of people in the New Age world like to fling around quantum this, quantum that.
Yeah.
In science, we learned that everything is made of molecules, and molecules are made of electrons, protons, and neutrons, yet those particles are made of yet an even smaller component, which is an electromagnetically charged particle referred to as quanta, and that's where the term quantum physics comes from. Everything. We're talking light, all forms of energy, all forms of matter. Let's say if you got a cup of coffee in front of you, the coffee, the cup, you, everything on the subatomic level is made from the same energetic particle. So what we're seeing is that life as we know it depends upon light. Everything we eat is a concentrated form of light, whether it's plants, which use photosynthesis and need light to grow, whether it's the animals that eat the plants and we eat those animals. We need light, or our planet would be a chunk of frozen ice. Everything in our existence depends upon energy and light. So what we're finding now is that the brain and the energy that makes a person alive is a quantum field. And we know from the law of the conservation of energy that energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another.
Right.
So what we're seeing is that physics is now being able to explain that the activity that goes on in the brain in the electrical and energetic sense does not cease when the body dies.
Mark, stand by. I've got to take a break here. Exo Nation, my guest this hour is Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer. And if you'd like to find out more about Mark, evidenceofeternity.com. And don't forget, he's going to be at the Sedona Spirit Symposium, Understanding the Afterlife Through the 21st Century Science, from June 9 until 11. This is the X Zone. We'll both be back on the other side of this break. Whatever you do, and I mean whatever you do, don't go away.
Afterlife expert Roberta Grimes was the first one to say that dying can be fun. Now her best-selling book, The Fun of Dying, is available in stores worldwide. So if you wonder whether death ends life, how it feels to die, or what heaven might be like, The Fun of Dying was written for you. And if you have always been afraid of death, or if you worry that your life has no meaning, let The Fun of Dying ease your fears and bring new meaning to your life. Nothing said in The Fun of Dying is based on the teachings of any religion. Instead, Roberta draws on evidence to explain how death happens, how it feels, and what comes next. A lot of the best death-related evidence was produced in the first half of the 20th century. When it is put together with recent discoveries, it tells a consistent and amazing story. Roberta Grimes blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com. Her wonderful book, The Fun of Dying, is available on Amazon and at stores worldwide wherever books are sold. You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
While science pursues fact, magic accesses the quantum level, bridging random facts to form truth. As long as science and magic remain separate and polarized, the truth cannot be known. I'm Wilda Wiecka. Join me on the Science of Magic radio program dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. During each episode, I'll be speaking with experienced and respected scientists and mystics. From astrologers to astronomers, from medical doctors to shaman, the scientific method to dowsing and intuition, we will weave together information from seemingly divergent practices to promote unity and enlightenment. Join me, Wilda Wiecka, and the Science of Magic right here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. For more information, visit www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Linnea Starr began to demonstrate a metaphysical connection to the spirit world as a little girl. Her family noticed the connection, but it was a great-grandmother who told the family that Linnea was indeed gifted. The great-grandmother, who was also gifted, felt that Linnea had indeed inherited these attributes. It has been noticed that oftentimes such things are passed down through the generations. Linnea was also born with a caul, a thin white membrane across a newborn's face. Legend has it that if the baby is born with this caul, the child will have second sight, or what we call psychic abilities. Linnea Starr does past, present, and future, and has the gift of prophecy. It is written within scriptures that if you are able to give factual information, and prophecies indeed come true, the gift indeed comes from the divine realm. Linnea Starr does large interactive groups as well as private gatherings. For more information on Linnea Starr or to contact Linnea for a one-on-one consultation, visit her website at www.linneastar.com. That's www.linneastar.com.
Welcome back, X-Zone Nation. The psychic lawyer, the one and only Mark Anthony, is our special guest this hour. Now, he's got some upcoming events. Let me see, the University of Tucson, an evening of spirit communication on June the 7th. As we've been saying, the Sedona Spirit Symposium, Understanding the Afterlife Through the 21st Century Science, June 9 until 11. He's going to be in Lilydale, New York on July the 29th, and his Psychic Explorer Mystical Mayan Cruise is from October the 22nd until the 27th. For more information about Mark, you can find out everything on his website at evidenceofeternity.com. All right, Mark, so what are we saying, that Einstein had the right answers?
He certainly was headed in the right direction. I mean, one of the things that Albert Einstein said is that matter is energy, energy is light, and we are all light beings. And what we found, or what scientists have found starting in the 1920s in Russia, is something referred to as biophotons. And this is different than bioluminescence. Like bioluminescence would be like a firefly and certain types of jellyfish that emit light. Biophotons are also known as ultra-weak photon emissions. And, for example, if you drop a bowling ball on your foot, you immediately know that it hurts. And scientists since the 1920s and doctors have wondered, how does the information get to your brain so quickly? It's moving apparently at the speed of light. And biophotons, what scientists have found is that each of our cells emit low-level flashes of light, and that the light appears to contain information along the lines of a binary code, the way computers communicate. So think of your body, instead of flesh and bone and nerves, as a matrix of light flashing cells. And there are some scientists who believe that an individual cell can emit 100,000 flashes of light in a minute. So we are truly light beings. So we're communicating at the speed of light within our own body, and that's how things like dropping a bowling ball on your foot and you immediately feeling the pain work so quickly. So when Einstein said we are light beings, he was thinking in terms of the quantum particles which compose all matter, and yet it goes even further than that. So this is really fascinating stuff. And in fact, the study of biophotons has continued greatly. In 2012, the MIT talked about how biophotons can be the key to cellular communication. So there's a lot going on here with doctors and scientists all over the world, and now they're believing that this light, this energy, is a lot more than just flashes. It's transmitting information, yet once it gets in the brain, we're dealing with a much more complicated light system in the brain, and that's where the quantum consciousness theory is coming from.
It's almost as if we are using, in fact, fiber optics throughout our system.
Exactly. And fiber optics would be an imitation, if you will, of what's going on within our own bodies. Now, light, if you think about it, every great spiritual teacher, 5,000 years ago, the Hindus were talking, Krishna and the great sages of India referred to God in terms of light.
Right.
Moses, the burning bush could be interpreted as communing with God through light. Buddha talked about the light. Jesus, Muhammad, all the way up until today, all the great spiritual teachers talk about light. Also, people in near-death experiences, when your consciousness separates from your body, and the people who come back say that they go into a light and they're greeted by friends and relatives that they know who've passed. We're seeing how quantum physics is explaining that light is energy and energy is light, and that all energy and matter are composed of these electromagnetically charged particles referred to quanta. So we're seeing that light is the key to everything. And in the brain, Dr. Hans-Peter Dürr of the Max Planck Institute for Physics in Munich, he was explaining that inside of the brain, you have all of this electrical activity going on that he refers to as a quantum field. And what Professor Dürr said is that the brain's a lot like a computer hard drive. And when I die, I don't lose the information on the hard drive. He refers to this information on the hard drive as the consciousness. When the body dies, the spiritual quantum field continues. So think of your soul as kind of being the data on the hard drive that then gets transferred to the cloud, whether it's Dropbox or Microsoft Cloud or a thumb drive. And Dr. Dürr saying in this way that we're immortal.
Yeah.
And there was an American physicist, Evan Harris Walker. He said that consciousness appears to be a property of electrons and quantum tunneling through the brain.
Yes.
And we're also getting with the University of Arizona by Stuart Hammerhoff and Sir Adam Penrose from Oxford, who have explained that that consciousness is not created by the brain, but it is merely housed by the brain. And a lot of these physicists and doctors are referring to the brain as a carbon-12 resonator floating in salt water, okay, which is a funny way of looking at it, especially when you consider that the salinity content of your blood is identical to the salinity content of the ocean.
Yeah.
And that the brain seems to house this electrical and quantum, this electrical field, this quantum field, and that when the body dies, the energy transfers to another form and to another dimension.
How does that work with reincarnation then?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. There's this theory known as the Schwarzschild quantum lattice theory. Now, and this gets back to what Dr. Walker was theorizing. It's been shown in laboratories that an electron will disappear and then reappear in another location without going through the matter in between it. And yeah, and the physicists have been studying this, and they're like, well, where is it going?
Yeah.
And it appears that it is going into another dimension and then coming back into our dimension. We know this as a quantum leap. Energy transfers from one dimension to another. And the joke in the field of physics is, well, you're never really all there at one time, because our electrons, our quanta, are transferring constantly between this side and the other side, or wherever this other dimension goes. Now, the thought that human beings, at least in the spiritual sense, are multidimensional beings is nothing new.
No.
This has been hypothesized, discussed for centuries, and now scientists are beginning to see that it appears to be real. What is really fascinating is that when the body physically dies, then the electrons, with the quantum field in the brain, the energy in the brain is no longer anchored to this dimension. It is now transferring to a dimension that we refer to as the other side. And the string theorists, which is another branch of theoretical physics, they have indicated that there is not just one universe, but there are multiverses. And I know that you've had many guests on your show, because, I mean, this is right up X Zone's alley.
It sure is.
We talk about multiverses, and now we're starting to see this is the reality of what happens when we die. We transfer from this dimension to another dimension. Now, the other side, the spirit realm, if you will, the one I communicate with, I refer to as the other side. But in my work with communication with spirits, there appear to be several different levels, let's call them frequencies, to the other side. So there isn't just the other side. I think there are many dimensions which tend to overlap. Now, a lot of people say, well, that sounds crazy. Well, think about AM and FM radio. Let's say that we live in AM radio. We use frequency, vibration, energy. FM radio is a higher frequency modulation. It uses energy, frequency, and modulation. The two systems coexist. They're supposed to be separate, but occasionally they overlap.
Yes.
And it is the same with our world, our material world dimension, and the other side.
So this would almost give an explanation about ghosts, spirits.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And a lot of people say, oh, that spirit's trapped here. And I know there's a lot of people in this field that think that.
Yeah.
I don't believe that. I believe that spirits are not trapped, that once your consciousness separates from the body, you're aware of that, but you can travel between the other side and this side. I mean, I communicate with spirits pretty much every day in doing readings, and none of them have said, oh, I'm trapped, or oh, I'm miserable, or bummer, I'm dead.
Right.
They're like, okay, I'm coming from the other side to communicate with you, and they're slowing their frequency and vibration down. And what I'm doing, or anybody that has a spiritual encounter, you're raising your brainwave frequency to get a frequency match.
Once again, we're talking about vibrations. We're talking about frequencies. We're talking about what we call radio waves.
Absolutely. And what is amazing is that in the past decades, brainwave frequencies were discovered, and there's electrical activity going on in the brain. We know that.
Yes.
And it changes depending on what a person's doing. For example, the brainwaves of someone who's sleeping are very different than the brainwaves of someone who's wide awake.
Definitely.
And yeah, there's several different groupings of brainwaves. The four main groupings are beta, alpha, theta, delta. Beta is the conscious state. That's what you and I are in right now. That's when we're awake, we're alert, you go to work, you drive your car, you write checks, you tie your shoes.
You take commercial breaks with the news at the bottom of the hour. And we'll continue this with our good friend Mark Anthony. Once again, Exo Nation. Let me see. Sedona Spirit Symposium, Understanding the Afterlife Through the 21st Century Science, June 9 to 11. Visit his website, evidenceofeternity.com.
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? Well then, meet Dr. Kimberly McGeorge and her cutting-edge breakthrough knowledge that combines science with possibility. Dr. Kimberly brings real-life answers and healing to those open to alternative solutions. She teaches solution-based programs and classes that will change all areas of your life forever. Specializing in conscious creation, intuitive readings, and energy medicine, you can rapidly shift health, relationships, business, and money and abundance challenges quickly. Receive her best-selling book, Secret to Everything, at no cost by going to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone. That's right, transformation can start now. Just go to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone and receive Dr. Kimberly's book for free.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Thomas Jefferson was a Burgess of 27 when he met Martha Wales Skelton, a 22-year-old widowed heiress who was fondly called Patty by her family. They were married on January the 1st, 1772, and they took up residence in a cabin on the building site on top of a Virginia mountain that Thomas had named Monticello. As Thomas and Patty slowly built their first version of the great house at Monticello, the Revolutionary War was heating up. Patty, with difficulty, bore 5 children, but only 2 girls survived. Thomas's political career developed to the point where he was often away from home, but after he authored and signed the Declaration of Independence in Philadelphia, he resolved never again to leave his wife. He was elected the governor of Virginia, just as that state became the Revolution's last battleground. The Revolutionary War ended in 1781, and Thomas gladly retired altogether to my family, my farm, and my books. But Patty continued to want to bear her treasured husband a son, and late in the summer of 1782, she died of kidney failure at the age of 33, 4 months after having borne yet another girl. Thomas was so devastated by her death that he never remarried. He mourned her for the rest of his life, even as he helped to frame the peace in France and then became the first Secretary of State, the second Vice President, and the third President of the United States. This story is true. Thomas Jefferson was such an obsessive letter writer and record keeper that we know where he was and what he was doing nearly every day of his adult life. Every significant thing he says in My Thomas comes from his contemporary writings. My Thomas by Roberta Grimes is now available at Barnes & Noble, Costco, Target, Books A Million, Hudson Booksellers, Kmart, Walmart, Sam's Club, Walgreens, CVS, and online at Amazon.com. You can visit Roberta Grimes online at www.robertagrimes.com.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school, training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
Unwilling to be the government's deadly assassin, gifted psychic Kahara Mitchell went AWOL and ended up buried under rubble in the wake of a great tsunami. She regained consciousness far from Earth on the medical ship of a Daguerrean intergalactic fleet. Has she been rescued or abducted by aliens? The Chalice of Carrie, Kahira O'Donnell's latest paranormal science fiction romance, is the passionate story of an Earth woman and her destined mates, twin kings from another galaxy. Kahara uses her gifts fighting alongside Lords Rom and Ra in a war that will determine the destiny of galaxies. The Chalice of Carrie by Kahira O'Donnell is now available at KahiraO'Donnell.com or at Amazon.com. You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. What Happened in Benghazi is revealed by Nicholas Genix, author of Obama, Islam, and Benghazi. He informs the American people that President Obama deceived them by advocating a strong foreign policy prior to the 2012 presidential election, and Hillary Clinton supported this deception. As the title infers, there is a connection between Obama, Islam, and Benghazi. Ample evidence informs Americans that Obama's early indoctrination in the Quran developed an affinity for Islam, why the Quran is the source of discontent in many countries, and why the Obama foreign policy deception led to poor military action and caused the loss of American lives in Benghazi. Genix provides 36 questions for the Select Committee on Benghazi to validate if Americans are justified to mistrust President Obama and Hillary Clinton. An overview of Obama, Islam, and Benghazi is presented on the website www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com. Annie Callahan, dedicated to negotiating a position for Earth within the Daguerrean Coalition, had trained for 3 years to become an Earth ambassador. Yet, the very eve of her arrival at the capital ruling planet, she is claimed as destined mate to an oversized, mating-maddened vamp who swears he will never release her. Lord Aztaran, king of the Macian sector, has waited over 900 years for his destined mate. Having found her as an alpha vamp, he is unable to relinquish Annie, virtually holding her hostage until he can claim her. Yet Macians cannot survive without their mate's love. How could he strip her of her citizenship, her ambassadorship, and her freedom and expect to win her heart? With All That I Am by Kahira O'Donnell is the latest book in this exciting series, The Daguerrean Chronicles, guaranteed to keep readers coming back for more. With All That I Am by Kahira O'Donnell is available on Amazon.com and KahiraO'Donnell.com. Welcome back, everyone. My guest this hour is the psychic lawyer himself, the one and only Mark Anthony. Now, here's a couple of events that you'll be able to catch Mark at. The Unity of Tucson, an evening of spirit communication, June the 7th. Sedona Spirit Symposium, Understanding the Afterlife Through 21st Century Science, June 9 until June 11. He's going to be in Lilydale, New York, July the 29th, and on October 22nd to 27th,
Psychic Explorer Mystical Mayan Cruise. For more information on Mark and his events, visit evidenceofeternity.com. Sorry, Mark, I had to take my news break, but we were talking about the 4 wavelengths, of the brainwaves, which is
absolutely. There's the beta state, which is the state that you and I are in now, where we're able to function and go about our daily life. Basically, it's the awake state.
Right.
Then, if you've ever been sitting in algebra class and start daydreaming,
many times.
Yeah, many times. Then there's the alpha state, and alpha is a relaxed state. That's also when you meditate, you go into alpha. You are able to get images and visuals, and it can be very self-introspective. But basically, when you start to go to sleep, you go from beta to alpha to theta, and theta is a deep sleep. Then there's delta, which is basically an unconscious, extremely deep sleep. It is between the alpha and the theta wavelengths that it appears that psychic activity occurs. That's why a lot of psychics, mediums, or all of them basically will tell you that when we're doing what we do, you kind of get a high off of it because it feels really good, because what you're doing is you're surging your brain waves. Now, that's also the reason why a lot of people have visitations from loved ones when they're asleep. And there's a difference between a visitation and a dream. Dreams have a lot of that surrealistic and crazy nonsense of dreams where, all of a sudden, a bazooka turns into a rainbow and unicorns and that sort of thing. Where in a visitation, a deceased loved one will notice that your brainwave frequency is in that zone. We'll call it the X zone, okay? And the spirit will align his or her frequency with that frequency. And you can tell a visitation because it has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it feels real. And when somebody comes out of it or wakes up, they are convinced that they actually had a conversation or a meeting with somebody who has passed to the other side, and that's because they have. Now, in my book, Evidence of Eternity, I explain this in great detail, and I refer to what I do as a medium as interdimensional communication, because that's what we're doing. We're communicating from the material world to the other side dimension. In other words, we live in AM, the other side's FM, and we're having interfrequency, interdimensional communication. So that all ties into something, again, that Einstein said, is that concerning matter, Einstein said we've been all wrong. What we have called matter is merely energy, whose vibration has been lowered so it can be perceptible to the senses. There's no matter. And what he said is, everything is energy, and if you match the frequency, you cannot help but get the reality you want. He said, this is not philosophy, this is physics. What I find fascinating is that Nikola Tesla, he said that what one man calls God, another calls the laws of physics. So fast forward 100 years, and now we're getting physicists all over the world that are talking about the same thing. It's just now we have the technology to be able to prove these things. I mean, when you have Stuart Hameroff from the University of Arizona Center for Consciousness Studies teaming up with Sir Roger Penrose of Oxford, along with Roger Eckenhoff of the University of Pennsylvania, and they're talking about brainwave functioning and how when people die, your quantum field in your brain is going to a different frequency. Well, this is what Einstein and Tesla and then the great spiritualist Edgar Cayce have been talking about for well over a century now. So this is pretty exciting stuff. I think that we are on the verge of not only proving the existence of a soul, which you can refer to as consciousness or the quantum field, but also the existence of an afterlife, and perhaps this energetic interconnection and this unity of the quantum field. That may be what God is, as opposed to a white guy sitting on a throne with a scepter.
So it seems that science is finally meeting paranormal researchers, psychics, and mediums, presenting the scientific facts.
And what's nice about this is this also takes the woohoo goofiness out of the paranormal field, because there's a lot of the problem with the paranormal field is that a lot of people are clinging to backward primitive superstitions, which a lot of religions do. And I don't mean to crash on religions. Religions are a means, a human material world way of trying to understand and perceive the infinite energetic quantum field that is God. And that's a great thing, and that's a good thing. It's when people start creating God in their own image so that he hates the same people you do, and then that's where it gets all crazy, because God isn't about hating people. God is about this energetic and this love connection between everyone. But we're getting to the point now where it very well may be possible to definitively prove the afterlife exists through scientific means.
Where does the pineal gland fit into the entire scenario? Because I hear this mentioned a lot when it comes to the New Age genre and those wannabe quantum physicists who read about 2 pages on the internet and they know everything they need to know.
The pineal gland, fascinating gland. It is, if you look at the center of the forehead, where people talk about the proverbial third eye.
Yes.
I know in yoga they talk about the indigo colored chakra, which is an energy center. If you go about 4 inches behind the forehead, there's a small, it's like a lima bean. It's smaller than a lima bean. It's like a pea-sized gland, the pineal gland. The pineal gland regulates our brainwave frequency. It regulates our circadian rhythms. That's like when we get up, when we're hungry. It secretes the hormone melatonin. It also regulates or controls our ability to perceive light. Oop, there it is again, light. Okay. Now, in the past 20 years, there's been a joint Israeli-French study, there was a German study, and a British study, which indicated that within the pineal gland are magnetite and calcite crystals. So what we have is an extremely sophisticated gland that generates an electromagnetic field. In other words, Rob, we've got a radio transmitter and receiver in our head. So now we're getting back to the brainwave frequency. This is the part of the brain which is governing the beta, alpha, theta, delta waves.
Right.
It's our ability to perceive light. Okay, you can perceive light in the spiritual sense as God, or light as when you turn on the lights. Also, we've got the biophotons flashing through our entire body, so that we're this light energy matrix. And the pineal gland is what enables people to have psychic and mediumistic experiences, because that is the mechanical, if you will, apparatus which adjusts our frequency to align with the frequency of the other side. So the pineal gland is an extremely sophisticated gland. It's being studied the world over, but this is the key to all psychic activity.
So if we were to break it down, this is, over the years I've heard so many things about the light at the end of the tunnel, the people who go to the light, like you've said, light beings. And it seems that everything is now coming together. And how does John Q. Public accept this explanation for what they have thought to have been a totally mystical experience?
Well, it is a mystical experience, but there is a logical and a rational explanation for everything. People say, "Oh, I see spirits." Other people say, "Oh, you're nuts." But when you start looking at the pineal gland, and maybe, for some reason, people like me can go into that alpha theta border while in the conscious state. So I must be producing beta, alpha, theta waves simultaneously. And that's what enables me to voluntarily turn on this ability to communicate with the other side. I don't look at myself as special or different, because everybody has varying skills and things which make them unique and gifted. I mean, whether it's being an auto mechanic or somebody that can build a building, or just somebody that has the patience to work with Alzheimer patients. Those are all gifts from God. But we are now seeing that for these mystical experiences, there is a rational experience. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, people used to think that they got sick because evil vapors at night would emerge and get them. Well, with the discovery of the microscope, we began to see that there were germs, viruses, fungus, bacteria, all sorts of things that make people sick. All right, so maybe it removed the woohoo, but it gave a logical explanation why people got sick, and nobody understood how before that. So because you are able to alter your consciousness and have an experience with a light being and call it an angelic entity, or feeling that the God's coming to you, or you have a near-death experience, you go into the light, what you're doing is your consciousness is being liberated temporarily from the material world confines of a body and interfacing with a purely quantum state, which is another frequency. And that is a mystical, and is a spiritual, and it's a beautiful thing. It's just now we understand what it is.
But are we going to take the God out of God if we continue in this direction?
Not at all, because I think when you look at what Tesla was saying, and what Edgar Cayce said something really fascinating on this in one of his readings. Edgar Cayce said that electricity or vibration is the same energy you call God. Not that God is an electric light or a machine, but vibration that is creative is of the same energy as life itself. And now, if energy contains and transmits intelligence, and energy is everywhere, because everything, whether it's a piece of ice on the planetoid known as Pluto that's orbiting our sun, or it's one of the ventricles, going into your heart, that are all composed of the same quanta, the same energetically charged particles on a subatomic level. This means that energy is everywhere. Energy has the ability to transmit intelligence. This means, in my belief, that God is everywhere. So we're not taking the God out of it. We're realizing that God is this infinite network, this force, this transcendent being that is not limited to time, space, distance. And maybe we can't understand it, at least not now. Maybe in a human material world, limited brain perception of things, we're not able to understand it. But I believe that the ultimate objective of science is the discovery of God, and we're on the road to that discovery.
I know that you've got an event coming up that we've been talking about, Sedona Spirit Symposium, and you're going to be talking about the understanding the afterlife through the 21st century science. You're going to be there from June the 9th to 11th. Can you tell us about the symposium?
Symposium's going to be amazing. I've teamed up with Dr. Gary Schwartz, who's one of the foremost near-death experience researchers in the world. He's the head of neurology at the University of Arizona, which is kind of the epicenter of survival of consciousness studies in the world, actually. Dr. Marjorie Woolacott, who is a brain specialist, reincarnation, near-death experience expert, and she also studies consciousness and meditation. Dr. Robin Weeks, he is the head of the Yavapai College in Sedona, where the symposium will be held. He's a NASA scientist, and his experiments have been at the bottom of the ocean in the Mariana Trench, understanding the bottom of the ocean, and they've also been aboard the space shuttle. So he is going to explain how science and spirituality are on the same page. So we're going to have, over the between the 9th and the 11th, We're going to be talking about life after death, survival of consciousness, near-death experiences. I'll be explaining spirit communication. I'll also be doing a presentation on how over a third of our presidents have been advised by psychics and mediums, and I call it the psychics behind the thrones, rulers, royals, psychics, and spirits. We're going to have some 2 panel discussions, one on coping with the death of a loved one, another one on consciousness, and then the symposium's grand finale, if you will be me doing a mediumship demonstration where I'll be conducting random audience members with loved ones in spirit. But the fun thing about this, Rob, it's not going to be like sitting there watching algebra on stage, okay? This is going to be fun, enlightening, entertaining, because Robin and Gary Schwartz and Marjorie Willicott were all experienced speakers, and I'll tell you, Gary Schwartz is hysterical. Marjorie is a fantastic speaker. This is going to be a very uplifting, healing, fun, and educational experience. And then again, it's in Sedona, one of the most incredible places in the world.
What makes Sedona so special?
Aside from its incredible beauty, there's a lot of vortexes, and I think it has a lot to do with the orange cliffs are orange because of the iron and the mineral content that is natural to Sedona. And we know that iron is magnetized. I think there's a lot of electromagnetic fields, which people call vortexes. Yeah. So the energetic frequency is just higher there. It's like right before a rainstorm. You ever notice how people get all kind of energized?
Yes.
You know, your spirits get lifted. That's because the electrical activity in the atmosphere, it gets ionized. In other words, all of a sudden the electrical activity in the atmosphere is kicked up a couple notches, and that stimulates the human nervous system.
Hey, Mark.
And it's also why, like cooler, dry climates, people are more active. That's why Colorado is the fittest state in the country.
Mark, stand by, buddy. I've got to take my final break here. Exo Nation. Mark Anthony is our guest. Visit his website, evidenceofeternity.com. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. Don't go away.
Little children aren't the only ones afraid of the dark. Millions of soldiers return from war zones with PTSD, anger, frustration, fear, and loneliness, much of which surfaces during the darkness of the night. You have the chance to change the lives of these American heroes. Songs and Stories for Soldiers.us provides free MP3 players for these men and women. With a list of 3 million songs in 16 different styles, 100,000 audiobooks, and 30,000 old-time radio programs, every veteran can find something to soothe and comfort them at no cost. All our players contain an 8-hour audio program designed to help veterans fall asleep. With 1,500 plus vets now participating, it's our goal to deliver 10,000 audio players this year. Go to our website at songsandstoriesforsoldiers.us. Help us help a veteran make it through the night.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. If you enjoy reading a good mystery with a touch of the paranormal, then you'll love From Out of the Woodwork by William S. Peckham.
Sean Kennedy, a Toronto contractor, buys derelict houses, guts them, and turns them into multi-family dwellings. When Sean buys 29 Livery Lane, a century house in ruins, and starts the renovation, the house fights back. He is visited by ghosts of owners past. His visions are triggered by touching an oak mantle, reading a faded letter, opening an old locket, or opening a brand new casket in the basement. These visions will take you on a trip across southern Ontario from Niagara Falls to Toronto to Kingston. From Out of the Woodwork is now available in paperback and on your favorite electronic reader. To order your copy of From Out of the Woodwork, go to www.williamspeckham.com. That's www.williamspeckham.com. Exonation, Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer, is our special guest this hour. Once again, I'm going to give you a couple of upcoming events where you can get a hold of Mark yourself and sit down and have a good chinwag with him. The Unity of Tucson, an evening of spirit communication, June 7. Sedona Spirit Symposium, Understanding the Afterlife Through 21st Century Science, June 9 to 11. Lilydale, New York, July 29. And October 22nd to the 27th, Psychic Explorer Mystical Mayan Cruise. For more information on Mark and his events, www.evidenceofeternity.com. Mark, what are your final thoughts for the Exo Nation tonight? How would you like to wrap this all up in a nice little bundle?
It comes down to this. We're immortal beings having a temporary material world existence, and we know that because energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. And not even death can kill life.
Then how do we define death?
It depends on how you want to look at it. From the material world sense, when our body ceases to function, that would be death. And we grieve because we miss the physical presence of a person. But think of your body as a car. And when the car stops working, you are not the car. You get out of the car and you move on. And as a lot of quantum theorists are now saying, that quantum field can reattach to a new host, another body. So we now are looking at reincarnation not as a mystical belief, but as perhaps a reality of physics.
But how does that soul, how does that energy find its way into the new host, a fetus?
That's the hard part, and I would like to say I have all the answers. I have insights, and I'm seeing how the physics to all this works, and that may be what that infinite network of intelligence that we call God has a lot to do with.
The God factor.
The God factor.
Hey, Mark, as always, time goes by so fast when you're with us, my friend. You are going to be one heck of a busy man this summer. Unity of Tucson, an evening of spirit communication, June 7th. Sedona Spirit Symposium, Understanding the Afterlife Through 21st Century Science, June 9 to 11. Lilydale, New York. That's always a lot of fun, July 29th. And, your psychic cruises. Psychic Explorer Mystical Mayans Cruise, October 22nd to 27th. Mark, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show tonight and helping us better understand that we're all a matter of light.
Yes, we are. We are all light beings. And it's a privilege being in the material world, even though some days don't feel that way, but always look to the light.
You take care, my friend, and thanks very much for joining us, Mark.
Thank you, Rob. God bless you.
God bless you, my good friend. Exonation, my guest this hour has been the psychic lawyer himself, Mark Anthony. And if you'd like to see my interview with Mark Anthony that we did for the X-Zone TV show, go online at www.xzonetv.com. All 13 episodes from Season 1, 2015 are there. That's at www.xzonetv.com. I'll be back on the other side of this break with the news at 6.5 minutes past the top of the hour as we continue here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Send me your emails. I love getting your emails, but like I keep saying, some of you guys are a little strange. Don't forget your tinfoil hats, guys. X Zone at xzoneradiotv.com.